This is Meg Thurlow speaking from the Organic Garden, and I'd like to talk to you today about pumpkins, squashes and gourds. At first glance they appear to be different, but they're all members of the cucumber family. And pumpkins everyone knows and associates with Cinderella and Halloween. Squashes are identical to pumpkins, but they are split into two groups, the summer and the winter types. Gourds are generally grown for their ornamental fruits that are dried and then hollowed out. Marrows are usually thought of as a green striped vegetable, which is familiar to many gardeners, but there are other attractive fruiting varieties such as the pattypans, and the best known of these are the Custard White and the yellow scallopini. They have smooth skin and flesh, and these are picked quite young all through the summer. More or less they're grown as courgettes. And where do courgettes fit into all of this? Well, they are baby marrows. My grandfather was only interested in growing the trusty old long green trailing types of marrow that grew to enormous proportions, and these were then put into store at the end of the summer to be used during the winter time. I can still see my poor old grandmother struggling to stack them like horticultural torpedoes on top of the wardrobes. There was no central heating in those days. She would then have to use them up as Christmas approached, with some storing well into the new year, but it wasn't unknown for one or two of them to explode during the course of the winter. The pumpkin family has been with us since the 16th century. Then it was used in pies and soups, and they would also be put into the winter store alongside the crab apples to supplement the winter harvest. As time passed, the landed gentry began to regard the pumpkin as peasant food and began to shun it. It was the day of the green marrow at the expense of everything else, and the marrow carried the day for many a gardener right up until the late 1960s. For a long time the pumpkin family wasn't taken seriously and was regarded as more of a novelty vegetable. Its cause wasn't helped by the giant vegetable craze or saw huge sumo-sized pumpkins being lifted by cranes onto the backs of lorries to be taken off to the shows. And of course on Halloween night the poor old pumpkin was only considered fit to hollow out, cut a grotesque face in it and stick a candle inside. What an undignified end for a plant. Pumpkins do provide a spectacular end to the summer. With all of their different shapes and colours, they just scream out for attention. But happily these days they are once more being appreciated for their eating qualities, and we are still discovering the best ways to use them. Personally, I think they make great soups. Pumpkins, squashes, marrows, courgettes, gourds are all grown from seed. The seed is sown during April in a 3-inch 9cm pot. Set the seed on edge to prevent it rotting. I like to push it into the compost with the point facing downwards. Place it somewhere warm for the seed to germinate and wait for it to produce 4 leaves before planting it out in the open ground, sometimes during May. It is best to give it some protection in the early days just to get it established, but don't allow the plants to go short of water, but on the other hand, don't drown them. To prevent this, create a small soil mound and plant them at the top. If any of the roots appear through the surface of the soil, just cover them up with more soil or compost. All of the pumpkin family are vigorous trailing plants and require plenty of room. The exception are the summer squashes that generally have a more bushy habit. Winter squashes trail. The summer squashes are used as required, but the winter squashes and pumpkins can be stored for months. Cut them from the mother plant as the stalk begins to darken and harden, but before the first frosts arrive, and place them somewhere, usually inside a greenhouse or a warm shed, where they can dry off slightly, use some of the surplus water, and then they can be stored by for the winter time. There is a variety, Retsa or Cubulis, which has the synonym Lady Godiva, because it has naked seeds that have an almond flavour, and these can be eaten raw or roasted. So I do hope that we give all of the pumpkin and squash family a chance to impress us with their eating qualities.